What COVID-19 has taught us, if it's taught us anything, is that our safety, security, well-being is directly connected to the most vulnerable in our society. In cities where we live densely, where we're hyper-connected, where we have an interaction on a daily basis with dozens, if not hundreds of people, caring for the poorest, most vulnerable, disenfranchised, marginalized of our society is not just an ethical or moral decision. It's also a decision of self-preservation and self-interest. A lot of the growth, the economy of Brazil is based in cities. Brazil is more than 84% urbanized, which means it's really, in a way, reached its urbanization transition. What you have, though, in Brazilian cities, which is characteristic not just of Brazil, but across a lot of Latin America, are really high rates of inequality. You have a concentration of wealth within cities, within very small, narrow demographics, and large areas of deep poverty, of high levels of marginalization, of higher levels of informal working. And this sort of spatial segregation has also generated all sorts of challenges in cities. One thing I would say at the outset when it comes to COVID-19 and cities in Brazil is first to understand the gravity and the seriousness of the crisis that we're in. I mean, Brazil has actually had about 11% of all COVID-related deaths, yet it has just 2.7% of the global population. That's one of the highest ratios in the world. Cities have experienced pandemics in the 14th century, in the 19th century, the 20th century. And often what happens is, despite the horrendous loss of life, you actually see some pretty extraordinary improvements in planning and in design of cities. I think COVID does represent an opportunity. And the reason is that in Brazil and elsewhere, most people, in spite of all the challenges, they don't want to go exactly back to the old normal. Rethinking some aspects of transportation and trying to emphasize pro-health moves in transportation, to rethinking hygiene and sanitation in areas that have been neglected, to thinking about greening the city in new ways and innovative ways, to certainly building in technology layers and infrastructure layers. Brazilian cities are facing enormous challenges in a post-COVID-19 world. They are going to have to radically transform the ways in which they engage with fundamental issues of equity, of climate, environmental sustainability, and of the digital transformation. But as more and more people have gone digital, this means that people have more choice in Brazil to choose where they want to live. And what we're seeing is a lot of the creative classes in Brazilian cities, the sort of high net worth individuals, people who are well educated, who are working professional jobs, who often bring a lot of the, let's call it, intellectual and human capital assets to the city. They're starting to make decisions about where they want to live based on their lifestyle. They're not required to live necessarily in the downtown core. So cities are going to have to make themselves much more attractive and be much more competitive to bring in that talent in the future in a world where people are going digital. What I'm struck by in cities like Sao Paulo and even parts of Rio and certainly in the south and north is that there is a lot of inspired leadership happening at the grassroots. People who are looking to improve the quality of their casa, of their neighborhood. People who are investing in the networks of reciprocity that exists locally and coming up with creative solutions in the absence of state support. That, I think, is the hope we have in Brazil, is this capability of working in adversity, the creativity of leveraging interesting solutions. The challenge, I think, is the sustaining it over time and the scaling. But there are endless examples. Anybody who walks through any Brazilian city will see it, from the favelas to the well-off areas, of local innovations to solve tricky problems.